Okay, welcome very much to Denby Dale Amateur Radio Club, and welcome to one of our online meetings. I'm really pleased to invite back Anthony K8ZT and Dennis W6DQ, who have been giving talks over the last 12 months to us on a series called HF for Beginners. And they've and they've done now a UK version. So thank you to Anthony and Dennis for putting the time in to try and make it UK literate. They're coming back to give a talk about operating on HF. And all I can say to viewers here tonight is that although it was called HF for Beginners, and we have got people in the room who would definitely class themselves as fairly new to the hobby and beginners in that sense, the fact is that I think, speaking on behalf of every one of us that's seen your previous talks, we've all got something from it. So even those of us that have been around for a very long time in this hobby have definitely learned something, both from some of the information that Anthony and Dennis have presented, and also from the discussion and so on. So thank you to you guys. And on that note, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you. Who's going first?
Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Nick. Dennis is going to be going first here. But before he starts out, this is week number 4. The slideshow has all 4 weeks in it. We'll give you a link to the slideshow and a link to all the videos at the very end. We're going to touch on a couple things: establishing your HF presence, expanding your scope.
Can you believe?
Well, can everyone, if you wouldn't mind, just everyone put themselves on mute, please. I didn't see who that was, but thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
That's okay. Establishing your HF presence, expanding your scope, expanding your playground, competitive activities and award chasing, joining a group, and keeping up with amateur radio news. And we'll tweak this. These pages are not right on here right now, but we'll put the page listings here after we're done today. So Dennis, take it away.
All right. Well, it's great to be here again. And thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Nick, for the introduction. And yeah, operating on HF. Well, let's see. For beginners, it's quite a change. You know, if you're a beginner, you typically start out these days on VHF and UHF. And of course, on VHF and UHF, you're limited to the range at which you can communicate, unless you're going through repeaters and what have you. And of course, now with some of the things like DMR, Echolink, and those sorts of modes running, it gives you a wider scope. But it's still you're using a handheld or a little 2-meter or VHF UHF radio. So getting on HF makes it quite different. It really expands the scope of who you can talk to. When you're on VHF, UHF on the repeaters, you've got a limited range and a limited number of people you can speak with. Get on HF, and suddenly the whole world is available to you, and that is really the joy of HF. But there are challenges with that, as one might believe, worldwide scope. And of course, one of them is multiple languages and non-native English speaking amateurs. For the most part, I think most everybody in amateur radio does speak English to a great extent. But I myself, my hearing is not so good anymore, so I have a little difficulty with some of the heavy accents. It's difficult to understand sometimes. But that's why CW is nice, because that's not burdened by the language barrier in any way. But a lot of among the language issues are, of course, the rules and regulations in different countries as you're going around the world. The rules do vary. Band plans vary. So what you can do on one frequency in one country, you can't necessarily do on that frequency in another country. But one of the pursuits that comes out of this, of course, is DX, or DX meaning distant, great distance. And so being able to work other countries around the world is one of the fascinating parts of amateur radio. And since its inception, breaking down the barriers between countries, which is a wonderful aspect of amateur radio. Here in the States, it's one of the basis and purposes in our regulations for amateur radio to exist is for international communications. Some of the other things you could get into: contesting, if you're competitive. And even if you're not competitive, contesting can still be a lot of fun. And it's a good way to test out equipment and what have you. And of course, we'll talk about logging. Here in the States, logging is no longer required, but it's a nice thing to be able to do, is to keep a log. And a lot of times I just keep a paper log from our nets that we do. That's what this was from, a net last night. I just keep track of who's on the net on paper. But logging used to be a requirement. Now it's nice to keep track of who you've talked to, and any notes that you keep on a QSO. And then we'll talk about QSLs, the confirmation of the contact, getting QSL cards and all that. So multiple languages and non-native English. If you're working phone, one of the things that's important is using phonetics. And so, like in my case, Whiskey 6 Delta Quebec would be how I would use my call sign. Using the phonetics, and the NATO IARU phonetic alphabet are the ones that we suggest. It's a common phonetic alphabet that's used throughout the world, which is nice. And like we say here, avoid using idioms and figures of speech. Here in the States, and I have to share this, Delta Quebec, which is my call sign. One of my friends here in California found out that I'd gotten my upgrade, or upgraded my, not my upgrade, but had gotten my call sign changed to W6DQ. And he happened to hear me on a repeater one day and called me Dairy Queen. Now, Dairy Queen happens to be a fast food chain here in the States, and that's stuck, unfortunately. But see, that's one of those idioms, Dairy Queen. Now, Delta Quebec, I always like Delta Quebec. I'm not Dairy Queen, but it's kind of a joke between me and my friends. But it makes the basic QSOs and rag chewing a little bit more difficult when you have that issue with language, and especially with accents and what have you. So something to be aware of. Okay, so make sure that, like we mentioned here, following the band plans and the licensing rules of operating. See, you're in IARU Region 1, and we're located in Region 2 here. And on some bands, we have different band plans between Region 1 and Region 2, which means that we can operate on frequencies that you can't operate on, but you can operate on frequencies that we can't operate on. So that leads to things like cross-band operating, where we run two different portions of the band talking to each other. But Anthony has a link there for rules for the different organizations, and that's a link you can check out to see what the band plans are in other countries and other areas, other regions.
And just a reminder, whenever you see this font and this little symbol, that means it's a link you can click on to go up.
All right, Anthony, your turn. I hand it over to you.
Thank you. So DXing is something a lot of people enjoy. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I have, again, a link here with a bunch of information on DXing news and schedules. To work the rare DX, a lot of times you have to wait for a DXpedition. And a DXpedition is when a number of people go to a foreign country and they set up and operate on not a normal, but a portable situation. So you need to know when they're going to be there, what bands they're going to be on, etc. You also need to understand some of the protocols of DXing. DXing is often handled a little bit different than your standard rag chew or net conversation on the radio. Quite often, DX stations use split operation. This allows them to transmit on one frequency and then listen in a range of frequencies that are away from their frequency so that people will not be talking over top of them. This allows them to tune up and down in that range and pick out stations to answer. So it's a way to handle large numbers of callers at the same time without everyone being on the same frequency and no one being able to hear each other. There's a whole behavior and mannerism that should be followed in DX follow-ups. And there's also a DX code of conduct. And if you click on this little link, it'll take you out and talk about the DX code of conduct, some things that are helpful for not only working the DX station, but allowing other people to work the DX station. So one of the basic things is understanding how to operate your radio and split. Contesting, if you're new to contesting or want to find out more about it, I have a video of my presentation, Introduction to Amateur Radio Contesting, and a slideshow that goes along with that. You can view both of these. I also have a link here to the RSGB's guide, a beginner's guide to contesting, which is very good, and you can click on that link and go out for more information. Now, as far as logging requirements go, no longer required in most countries. There are still some that do. But in order to maintain an HF presence, it's important to be able to log so you can create QSL confirmations, chase awards. So most active HF operators keep either a paper or computer log of all their contacts. And I have a whole presentation on logging with the information on both contesting and general logging. This is a page out of my logbook. This is about 6 months after I got on HF back in 1983. And this was ran in an article I did in CQ magazine recently, and K8ZT wrote me an email saying, thanks for the memories from 1983 when he saw his call sign at the top of the log sheet. Being able to confirm QSLing, I have some information here. It's one from the AWR on the basics of QSLing. I have another link to the RSGB QSL Bureau, or often referred to on CW as BURO. The Bureau is a way to send cards in bulk out of the country without having to worry about pre-addressed return envelopes and return postage. But the bureaus tend to be a little bit slow. So what a lot of people now is they're doing QSLing via electronic means. Things such as Logbook of the World, EQSL, and OQRS, which stands for Online QSL Card Request. And I have a whole presentation on that on QSLing in a digital world. It's also important to let others know how to reach you and how you will QSL via your QRZ.com page. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second here. So the first question is, are QSL cards still a thing? Who uses cards? Many people send QSL cards, although they're not nearly as widely used as they had been in the past. They're still useful and attractive to collect. Radio amateurs, many transmitting ham radio operators, particularly those using the HF bands, send them out regularly. And here's examples of some QSL cards in my collection. This is my previous QSL card, and this is my current card, the front and the back, with the scenic railroad that I work on. And here's a card from Dennis with his novice call sign, WN6NIA, then he was WA6NIA, and then W6DQ, which also happens to be the call sign of his Elmer.
Yes.
So I mentioned QRZ.com a little earlier, and most people think about QRZ.com as a place to go in and type in a call sign and look up a station. So this is my page, and you'll notice that there's a few extra things at the bottom of the page. That's because you can register on QRZ.com. That allows you to set up what they refer to as a bio page, basically a web page with information that you want on it. That's no charge for that. The other thing you want to do after you register is you want to go into the details of your entry and check a couple things to make sure they're correct. They try and get these things correct, but sometimes they're not. One of the things that is commonly mistaken is the grid square. Sometimes they'll base it on your local post office as opposed to your actual location. So check your grid square to make sure all 6 characters are correct. The other thing you can do is you can say how you're going to QSL. Are you going to QSL via direct mail? Are you going to QSL via EQSL? Or are you going to QSL via Logbook of the World? So it's a good idea to put the information here so people know if they want to QSL with you, how to get in touch with you, and how to exchange a card. A couple other ways you can do this is with Club Log or with personal amateur radio pages. And this is just a screenshot of what I just showed you. Club Log is a free web-based tool for producing DX League tables, expedition tools, log searches, and you can search for information on QSLing and contacting hams. As I said earlier, this is a free service. You can sign up for it. Once you do, you upload your logs in the form of an ADIF. Why did it say I'm not logged in? Right. Come on. Okay, why is it not letting me log in? Let me try that one more time. Okay, well, it's not going to cooperate, but Fortunately, I have a screenshot of what you can do. You can go in after you've uploaded all your logs, and you can produce this, what they call a DXCC chart. And this chart will show you the countries that you've worked, the countries you've confirmed, and the countries that have been verified. You can choose which bands you want to see, and you can also click on these links and see the stations you worked. You can also see how they do QSLing. And one of the things you can do through this program is you can request online QSL card request. This is an electronic request that then results in you receiving a physical card. And I have a lot more on this in my presentation on QSLing. Typically, you can either get the card via the Bureau, often for free, or you can pay a small fee via PayPal and receive it directly in the mail.
All right. Yeah, Club Log's a great tool. That is a good one. All right. So I guess this is me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Modes, and more modes. So in some of the previous presentations, we talked about all the different modes that you can operate on HF. And of course, we talk about, phone and CW and all of that. Some hams will limit themselves to operating on one mode. And I will attest to that. When I was first licensed back 50 plus years ago, I was a dyed-in-the-wool CW op, and that's what I wanted to do. I never wanted to touch a microphone, and so I was always on CW. But then as I got older and got more experience, I was going, yeah, there's some other stuff I could do. I can have a little bit more fun on phone and some of the digital modes like radio teletype and things like that. So by going to other modes, you do increase, like we say here, you increase the opportunities to be able to work additional stations, work that rare DX, because maybe that rare DX station is only operating on phone, or maybe he's only operating on CW. So being able to operate on those modes, having access to those other modes, really makes a difference. And of course, if you're interested in the awards, RSGB HF awards, you've got a link there. Is that, I assume that's a link. It doesn't have the symbol there, but I'm assuming that's a link.
Anytime you see that font, it's going to be a link.
Yeah. So the different awards from RSGB, and of course from the ARRL, and I think Anthony's going to be talking about those a little bit later on. Worked all states here in the United States. But the modes that are available at 160 to 12 meters. And as we state here, 10 meters is considered part of the HF band, but its modes are a little bit more like the VHF band. So we'll separate that out. But voice is primarily single sideband and a small minority of AM. I will say, yeah, there is a minority of AM. I do operate AM on some of the HF bands. It's a lot of fun. We use a lot of vintage gear to do that, which makes it even more exciting. We don't run any FM, and there are no repeaters below 10 meters. So those exist on 10 meters. So we use Morse code, CW, and of course the digital modes, traditional digital mode like radio teletype. And radio teletype, when I started with radio teletype, no personal computers. It was a teletype machine, and it would shake the whole house when it would run. It was a lot of fun doing that. But that was an interesting to be able to operate that. Nowadays, we use the computer to do the digital modes like teletype, but now what's becoming extremely popular is FT8 and FT4, the weak signal JT modes, and they've become extremely popular because they're an enabler for a compromised station. Like if you're running low power, or you're in a situation where you have a compromised antenna, the digital modes are fantastic for that. So with using a computer, PSK is another weak signal mode, or I shouldn't say weak signal mode. It's like a QRP mode, I will call it. But there's all kinds of digital modes. And then the image mode, slow scan television is kind of interesting on running that on HF. And an even more unusual one is Hellschreiber. We'll talk about those two here in a minute.
And we do have a link up here at the top, so you can bring up the band plan. We do talk about this in earlier slides, but you can bring up the RSG band plan to see the band plan on any of these bands and see which modes are available in different frequency ranges. So that's available by clicking on the link at the top.
Yes. So yeah, most hams nowadays will start with SSB or digital, since the CW requirement has been dropped, the Morse code requirement. But there's still a lot of folks interested in learning Morse code and operating CW, and it is a fascinating and fun mode. It's about as basic as you get in amateur radio. And of course, we were talking about that earlier, talking about things like the Long Island CW Club and what have you. But one of the things that's nice about CW, and we'll talk more about this type of operating activity, is being able to operate portable with QRP, doing portable operations and contesting in QRP with CW. So why would, let's see, I think
Me now.
that's you. Yeah, go
Yes.
for it. That's yours.
Why would you use CW? Well, there's a better chance of contacts of making contacts than with single sideband. You need a much higher signal to noise ratio with single sideband contact to be able to get the information. So it's good for weaker signals, poor antennas, portable operations, and low power QRP equipment. It's also additional mode of contesting, and there's a lot of contesters actually that prefer operating in CW because they can make contacts quicker.
Mm-hmm.
As far as learning CW, there's no right way for all learners, but some suggestions that often provide good results, including learning characters as distinct sounds, not dits and das or dots and dashes. Learn characters at a speed above 10 words per minute so you avoid counting the dits and das in your head. Have a buddy or group to work with. Get on the air as soon as possible and start trying to make QSOs that really reinforces things. There are two great groups out there. There are three groups, actually, when you add in the one in the UK. There's three groups that I know of that are very active in this. The CW Academy of the CW Ops group, the Long Island CW group, which we just mentioned a little earlier, and the Essex CW Amateur Radio Club has classes available. You might also find a local group or club providing CW classes. This is some information on both those groups, and you can click on the links. Both of them did presentations for the Rat Pack group, so you can watch the videos from about a year ago from each one. I also have a slideshow presentation called Having Fun with Morse Code that talks a lot more about this. Now, digital modes, most digital modes on HF today are accomplished using a computer and a sound card, often called sound card modes or SCMs. Even though there are other methods, including FSK for RTTY, it is often handled in a similar manner. Digital modes, especially FT8 and FT4, are popular. They have remarkable performance with weak signals. They're great for suboptimal antennas, people with home antenna restrictions, great for lower powered radios. And for a lot of new hams, they avoid mic fright. There's a lot of hams that are afraid to get on the air and talk, but when you're doing it digitally, there's no mic fright. They also appeal to youth because they use computer screen and the visual aspect of their activities. The point-and-click QSOs are much more what many youth are involved with their computers. Although they're called sound card modes, the real magic actually occurs in the computer and its software, and the sound card simply acts as a means to transfer the data in and out of the radio and computer. And this is from an article in CQ magazine that I actually am the author of from March of 2023. And this little diagram was there also showing that if you take a radio with a built-in sound card, or you take a radio without a sound card and you add an external interface, you then have a radio with sound card capability. Once you link that up with your computer, you can install some software programs and it'll allow you to operate all these different modes. So if you install W6DQ, you can operate FT8, FT4, JT65, and Whisper and a few other modes. If you use the software FLDigi, you can do PSK, RTTY, even some CW, and almost every other sound card mode there is out there, including Hellschreiber, MFS, MT65, Olivia, etc., etc. Now, if you add one more piece of software, and this particular one, everything else is free up until this point. This particular piece of software has a cost involved with it, but it's called a VARA, V-A-R-A, software-based modem. This piece of extra software then lets you add to the sound card modes into WinLink, VARA AC, VARA FM, VARA chat, and VARA images, which are all used quite a bit for emergency communications. They can also be a way to send email when you don't have an internet connection. And I have a whole slideshow on FT8 and FT4, and you can also watch the video from the Rat Pack presentation on it. These are links to each of the pieces of software I talked about earlier: WSJTX, FLDigi, the VARA software modem, WinLink, and VARA AC. And these are their logos or pit screenshots of each of these. Okay, Dennis.
I was going to say, add something to what you just said about
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
using the digital modes. One of the nice things, a guy like me who is hearing impaired, I do have some hearing issues. Too many years as a sound engineer doing concerts, too many years as a musician playing rock and roll music. My hearing is not all that great anymore. So FT8 is wonderful for me because I don't have to listen to the radio. I can just turn the volume down. And so that's a real advantage for me. I don't have to worry about the language barriers and trying to understand what the other operator is saying. So there you go. Anyway, image modes, slow scan television. Slow scan television is kind of a cool method of sending basically what approaches photographic quality images over a voice channel. So it's essentially less than 3 kilohertz bandwidth. You could send in monochrome or in color. And typically you'd use an SSB transmitter on HF, and you'd use basically SSB because it's even though we consider it kind of the image mode is somewhat, it's not really digital, but it does use a voice channel to do it, and it's just the modulation is just a frequency that you hear. You'll hear these things chirping in the background. Usually on 20 meters, there's a lot of activity on SSTV around 14,235, somewhere right around in there. You'll hear a lot of that activity, and so you're basically frequency modulating an audio carrier on single sideband. So you'll hear that. And in the old days, it was rather cumbersome to do slow scan television. You used a long persistence cathode ray tube, and you'd create an image over like 15 seconds, scanning one line at a time on that long persistence tube. And then you got like a green image out of that. Well, things have come a long way. Nowadays, it's all computer, and it's wonderful to be able to use a computer to do that. You're going to want to check out the SSTV. Oh yeah, you got to bring up the audio.
I forgot.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting to do these days is receiving SSTV off the ISS. Now, in this case, it's on VHF on 2 meters, but the concept is the same. The way that it operates, you basically use the same software. It's receiving that audio signal and converting it into an image through a raster scan, one line at a time. So why don't you go ahead and run that.
Signal. Here we go. It automatically picked up PD 120. Let me turn this down now. You can see my sync information at 1200. My picture information between 1200 and 2300 hertz. If you push this magnifying glass, it'll pop open a large image here. And if you may see it kind of align the image here, make it straight. Sometimes it'll pause, then you'll see it align itself and continue. Yeah, you don't miss anything, but it just kind of pauses while the software is figuring that out. Here's the audio level running here. This looks like a good pass.
So he's using a piece of software called MMSSTV. It's a free software. It runs on very simple computers, and it only requires an audio interface to your radio, between your radio and your computer.
Right. Yeah. And we've actually used it with a handheld radio held up to the computer speaker to do that, or to the microphone on the computer to be able to do this. It really does work nicely. MMSSTV is a great piece of software, and like I say, it's a free download. Well, that's great.
Signal.
Yep. Okay, Hellschreiber is another interesting image mode. We were trying to, Anthony and I were talking about this. It's like printed text like you'd see in teletype, but it's also scanned like slow scan TV. And it's if you remember the old dot matrix printers, that's kind of the way this works. It's scanned as a series of lines with the dots, and basically a dark space and an open space. And over time, you get an image like this. It kind of looks like a facsimile. But Hellschreiber, it's very popular. A lot of folks run Hellschreiber. You'll hear it on HF. and it's just another way to send text. Oh,
It is included in the FL Digi
FL
software.
Digi. Yeah, it's part of the FL Digi package. That's right. Yep. All right.
Okay, let's see. You're
Okay.
still up, Dennis.
I'm still up. Okay. Oh, guys, I guess I am. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got a few more to go. Okay, so we've talked about building a home shack, like where we are here, but a lot of times you may decide you want to go portable, and portable is a lot of fun. We can go to different locations and operate, and maybe we want to go mobile, put a radio in a vehicle like our car, a train, a plane, or a ship. We can go maritime, mobile, all these different methods of operating portable and away from our home station. So there's a lot of activities in portable operating activities. Like here we have the POTA, which is the Parks on the Air. That's the U.S. National Parks, and it's a ongoing exercise here in the United States with the Parks on the Air. And a similar function that's worldwide is Summits on the Air. So folks are going out portable, getting on a mountaintop somewhere and activating that mountaintop. And there's various awards that you can receive for being the person who actually activates the mountaintop or receiving so many mountaintops. So Summits on the Air, Islands on the Air is very similar to that. Obviously, in this case, islands. Islands are assigned an IOTA number, and that's people collect IOTAs, and a lot of DXpeditions are IOTAs. So there's another
And
way.
the soda and IOTAs both originated in the UK. So you guys brought these to us. The Parks on the Air is worldwide. We tend to think of it as US, but it's worldwide activity.
Anybody can, but are they activating worldwide parks now?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Originally, it started out with just U.S. national parks, but now it's state parks, national parks, and parks around the world.
That's great.
It's probably the fastest growing portable operation. It's a little bit easier than Summits on the Air, and definitely easier than getting to an island.
Yeah. And of course, ARRL's Field Day becomes a worldwide event, and that's really showcasing portable operations. And it was originally intended as a being able to show emergency operations with amateur radio. Field Day actually came out of a couple of disasters that occurred here in the United States. One happens to be was in a city that I used to live in, which was Long Beach. Long Beach earthquake in 1933 led to Field Day. Amateur radio turned out to be the only communications out of the city of Long Beach following the 1933 earthquake. And it was a group of hams that got together. The Navy tried to set up a station to handle emergency communications. They couldn't make it work. The local hams came and saved the day, which is quite a story, but that led to Field Day. And of course, contesting portable or mobile is a big part of that. Being a rover on, we've talked about that on VHF, but roving and operating portable on HF contests is a great thing to do. So,
and I'm sorry, I'm amiss. I forgot to update this page and put in information on the UK field days that you guys have.
I wondered about that.
I forgot to do that, so I didn't cover it. I'm sorry about that.
So there is a UK RSGB sponsored. Is it RSGB sponsored field day?
Yeah, we've got both HF and VHF field days in the UK, Dennis.
Yeah,
Excellent.
They have more than us.
Yeah. Yeah, we only have two. We have the regular ARRL field day, and we have winter field day, which is another interesting one. So DXpeditions, Anthony was talking about DX, working DX earlier. Well, the ultimate experience in DX is to be the DX station, to be a DXpedition and be the rare one, and go to some rare location, remote in the world, and just go there and operate. And you'll be the target rather than being in the pileup trying to work the rare DX station. You'll be the rare DX station trying to be worked. But what you can do is not necessarily go to one of the rare places. We call it like a DXpedition vacation, a hamcation. Go to some popular location on a vacation and take your radio with you. And it doesn't even have to be in a foreign country. It could be someplace in your own country. And I've actually done that a few times myself, going out to some remote, going out on like a vacation and taking radios with me and operating from a remote location. It's a lot of fun to do that. We talked about mobile operating. So take your radio out of your ham shack and put it in your vehicle. It's a lot easier on HF and 6 meters a lot of times than doing that while in motion. VHF, you know, we run through the repeaters on VHF and UHF, but operating on HF mobile is a lot of fun. And today it's really easy. The radios have become so compact, so small. You put a 100-watt radio in your car, and the things are, you know, literally handheld, running on 12 volts. I've run a lot of mobile rigs. My first mobile rig I had in probably about 1970 or 1971, running 40 meters CW. And that was a heck of a lot of fun doing that. It was a challenge running CW while you're driving your car, but it was quite doable. And in those days, there wasn't as heavy traffic as there is around the areas these days. But operating HF, working DX, and putting a 100-watt mobile rig in your car is a lot of fun. Sometimes you might want to park to be able to operate. You're not in motion. You might be using a different type of antenna, something that has to be raised up from the vehicle, maybe a dipole that you're going to string up from a mast or something like that, using some kind of a fixed antenna. That makes it a lot more interesting as well, because mobile antenna is somewhat of a compromise. Remember that. It is difficult. I will tell you that my best DX on mobile was probably on 40 meters from here in the United States, on 40 meters running 100 watts, talking to an amateur in Australia. And to me, that was an achievement. That was really neat to be able to talk to him mobile on 40 meters. On the higher bands, on 10 meters, it's a whole lot easier. Propagation is for low power stations like a mobile rig is much easier to accomplish. But here are a lot of links available, a lot of information on making mobile contacts, the websites, articles, ham radio, mobile installation guidelines, basics. Ward Silver, of course, you've probably heard of Ward Silver and 0AX. He has a lot of information on being able to operate mobile and portable antennas. Gordo, my buddy Gordo, HF mobile antennas on YouTube. He does a lot of portable operating. He has a van that he takes out in camps and attends a lot of amateur radio events throughout the United States, everywhere from here to Dayton, and likes to go out and operate from those locations.
Now, when you go to these links, just ignore the side that the steering wheel's on, though, because you'll see that the steering wheel is probably wrong in all these links.
It's going to be all wrong. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Well, the next area we want to talk about is competitive activities and awards. And contesting, we talked a little bit about earlier, but one of the things I want to mention about contesting is, if you're not interested in the competition aspect of contesting, just view a contest as a large number of people that really want to talk to you. Don't even worry about copying their exchange. Just as long as you can give them the exchange they need from you, you can work them and work many stations during a contest. And if you don't have any friends to talk to on the air, contests are great because you're worth points, so people will still want to talk to you even if you don't have any friends. Award chasing, though, is another thing similar to contesting. Sometimes it's called paper chasing, and this is getting awards like Worked All States, Worked All Continents, DXCC, the RSGB HF Awards. CQ has one called Worked All Zones. They also have something called the DX Marathon I'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. Now, DXCC or DX Century Club means that you work 100 countries or more. It's offered by the ARRL. There are some other groups that offer similar 100 country activities. This is a link to the information on that. Currently, there's about 300 and I think 325, no, there's more than that. There's like 335 countries right now currently available. I can't remember the exact number. But some countries are eventually eliminated. They're called deleted countries, but you still get to count them. So the C-Cube DX Marathon is an activity that's good for both new hams, giving them an opportunity to work their first DX, but it's even better for hams who've already worked their first 100, 200, 300, 300 plus, because the problem was once you get up in the 300s, and I'm at 328, is getting a new one is hard. You got to wait for some really rare island and hope people can get through the ice and snow and whatever to get there. The nice thing about the DX Marathon is every January 1st, you start with a slate of 0. So any station you work is a new DXCC entity. And the marathon counts up the number of entities you work throughout the year, plus how many of the 40 CQ zones you work. And that is the total number of your entry. You can work any band you want. There's no multipliers per band, but you can use any band. You don't need QSL cards. There's a slideshow and a YouTube video of it, but let me just show you briefly. This is my current activity in the marathon. I started in January. I'm running 5 watts, so I'm in the 5 watt category. And you can see I've now worked 231 countries and all 40 of the zones. Now, this is when my tower came down in the end of August, and it's hampered me a little bit, so I'm still squeezing by, making a few contacts, but it also gets harder as the year goes on, because the first week, of course, I have no DX, so everyone I work is a new DX. I worked 49 countries in the first week, and then I worked another 23, and then another 27, and I was up to my 100 here, and then it gets a little harder. So these are all the countries I've worked so far this year with my station. And the nice thing is every year it starts again on January 1st and goes to December 31st. So you can have the interest of working DX throughout the year.
Yeah. Well, you're ahead of me now, Anthony, which is cool. I'm only at 193 countries now.
My friend and I text each other whenever we see a new country, so it's a great way also to build up, get a friend and work with them in the process.
Right. Yeah, I do the same thing here. One of my buddies here in Inyokern does that. All right, clubs. Well, you know about local clubs. That's why we're here talking with you all today. But a lot of clubs local clubs are important. They're important to the community to belong to a club. Like-minded individuals doing something that's fun for all of us. So you're already here in a club, so you don't need to find a club, presumably, but there are some resources for doing that. But what's interesting is there are a lot of special interest groups, special interest clubs and organizations and societies, national amateur radio societies. And in your case, the RSGB, Radio Society of Great Britain, is a great organization to belong to. I have to tell you, I should become a member of RSGB. I love the RSGB publications. I've been purchasing them for many, many, many years, and they're beautifully done. Of course, the ARRL, the American Radio Relay League, and the this is the Canadian Radio Association of Canada.
Yes.
I can't recall what that actually stands for. Radio Association of Canada.
Well, it depends whether you're doing it in French or English.
I guess that would be it. Yeah, we've had them as a speaker. He was the president of RAC, came and spoke on that pack a couple of years ago. IARU is another important one to be aware of. International Amateur Radio Union. This is this federation of 160 countries, and they set a lot of the band plans and what have you, work the band plans on an international basis. So IARU comes together every year for their annual convention to discuss those things. We mentioned special interest groups, special interest clubs, DX clubs. We have here in California, we have the Northern California DX Society and the Southern California DX Club. Oh yeah, okay, you went to a link. But yeah, so many.
A few of them out there.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the contesting clubs.
Mm-hmm. Contesting clubs. And what's neat about contesting clubs is that if you're a member of a contesting club, a lot of contests support what they call an aggregate score. And everybody who's a member of the contest club submits their score for a total aggregate score for the club, which really pushes you up in the numbers. QRP clubs, there's another list that you have. Of course, one of the amazing clubs and groups for QRP operators. AMSAT is a very special special interest group. And I guess we'd include that in HF because one of the satellite modes is using a 10-meter HF downlink. So you listen to the satellite on 10 meters and transmit on another band. So other special interest groups based on bands and modes. So 1010 International. 1010 International is 10 meters and has a number of different award levels for making contacts with various members of 1010. SMERC, 6 meters. We're still talking about HF here, but SMERC is a 6-meter club. But there are a lot of CW clubs, notably, and I think again you have a list. You have a link to the list.
Yes.
Organizations there. Things like FISTS International. FISTS is a organization. I used to be an active member in FISTS. I've let my membership drop, unfortunately, but sadly, I need to do that and renew that membership. And of course, something near and dear to me is AM. Of talk about special interests on HF. AM International, AMI, an organization I belong to, has been around for many, many, many years. We've got something like around, it's got to be well over 2,000 members in that group now, AMI. So there we go. Okay.
Well, with all these different things you can do on HF, it's probably good to be able to keep up on amateur radio news, whether it's general news, DXing news, contesting news, etc. And a couple of weeks ago, I did a presentation for the Rat Pack group calling Keeping Up with Amateur Radio News. And I know there's about 250 links or so in this of resources for news. So please feel free to go to those. Also, I have some stuff on my website. I have some web pages of general news, DX news, contesting, DX calendars, etc. You can click on any of these and go out and get information on DX calendars, for example. You can see what DXpeditions are going on. Hopefully this is working because it wasn't working the other day. No, it's not working right now for some reason.
Oh.
The time to, there it goes. It's working.
There it is. Yeah.
Okay. There's a problem with it popping up lately. They were doing some maintenance on it.
It works really well on the phone.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems with it on my phone.
If you're interested in DXing, one of the great sites out there is NG3K. It's called the ADXO, Announced DX Operations Site, and he has a list of all the DXpeditions coming up month by month, but he also has a calendar section, a contest section if you click on the top, and just for the major contests. So if you're interested in working the CQ Worldwide at the end of November, these are some of the stations that are going to be on as DX during the CQ Worldwide. And probably the best contest calendar out there, I think, now is the WA7B&M contest calendar. There's a number of contest calendars out there, but this is very extensive. You can view it many different ways. So if you want to see all the contests that are going on this week, you can click on the link. You get information on everything about the contest, plus a link to the rules, and often a way that you can submit your log. So to finish up here, we've done this 4-part series, and you might want to share it with other friends you know or other clubs by using this link, tiny.cc BGHF VHF UK. It brings you to this document, which is suitable for publishing in your local newsletter or passing out to your friends. But basically, it has all the information on the beginner's guide to VHF and UHF. We don't have a UK version of that, I'm sorry, but I'll talk to Marty about doing that. And then we have all the beginner's guide to HF UK version on this. And it has the links to not only the slideshow, but it has the links to the recordings, and we'll add the recording for week 4 here after Nick gets it posted. So this is an easy way to share all this information with another person. You can use this QR code or this shortcut here. And again, this is the link to today's presentation and to the whole slideshow that you can use that link. You can shoot the QR code. We'll take questions and answers in 1 second, but let's just go quickly and at the end just show you a few more things. My contact information, Dennis's contact information, and his lovely wife. Also, the Rat Pack group, and Dennis and I are both on the Rat Pack Planning Committee. The Rat Pack is a group that has presentations twice a week on Wednesday and Thursday night. They are at 9 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. So during the wintertime, they're at 0200 UTC, and during the summertime, they're at 0100 UTC. So I know it's not the most convenient time for you, but the good news is we record them all. We have over 335 recordings available for all the previous sessions. It's going to be a real fun one tonight if you want to stay up late. It's going to be holiday gifts for hams. I'm going to be the main presenter, and we have a number of people from the committee that have came up with their ideas. If you can't watch us tonight, in a couple days, you can come back and use the YouTube link to go view the slideshow presentation. And you're welcome to use these videos for any of your local clubs or friends. There's no limitations on using them.
We do actually get some live participants from Europe, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
So yeah, you're welcome to stop in anytime. And then finally, there's the list of all my presentations out there, and you're welcome to go to this page and view any of the slideshows. Most of them have recorded links with them. So if you're interested, for example, in N1M contesting software, or some of the things I mentioned today, including the logging, QSLing, FT8, Morse code, etc., these are all available on this link. So let's go back to the Q&A page. I'll leave this link up for just a minute here, and I will be happy to take questions, and Dennis will take complaints. I'll take questions and compliments.
All right, brilliant. Thank you, guys. That was very good indeed. And again, it's the great stuff is in your resources, in your slides there, because links to lots of clubs and information and so on, which is really, really helpful, that people do find helpful. We've also got viewers as well on YouTube. We've got a group of people that like to, or have got easy access to YouTube rather than Zoom, and so they come and watch us there. So we've got them there as well. I've just posted a note for the viewers on YouTube. If any of them got a question for you, to put it in the YouTube channel, and I'll read it out and put it to you. So just a reminder, they're also about 30 seconds behind the Zoom, the way the interface works between Zoom and YouTube. So when you see this on YouTube, guys, and you've got a question, just post them in the chat there.
And I put in the chat the link for the slideshow. And again, that's the slideshow for all four. So the one we did today was just the fourth part, but it's all in one giant slideshow of about 200 and I think 5 slides or something like that.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I've just put that in the link as well on YouTube, so the guys there can see that too. Okay, so going back to our room here, if we just bring up the screen of everyone here, hope everyone enjoyed it. Anyone got any questions to Anthony and Dennis? Who wants to go first? Shock them into silence tonight.
No Mike Fright. Come on, Mike Fright. No.
We'll take questions in FT8 also. Make sure you put all Dennis's questions in Hellschreiber, though.
Morse code.
I was going to say, when you were downloading, when you were just looking at Slow Scan TV and you were downloading the video coming down from the space station, you can do that. I've done it and demonstrated it to other people on a phone. So you can download the SSTV software on the phone, stick the microphone near to the output of your radio, and do it that way, which is kind of somewhat exciting, actually. It's quite an exciting way of doing it.
I agree on that one. Yes.
Yeah,
we've done that. We've done that.
We'll take questions on anything. It doesn't have to just be something we covered tonight.
Right, there we go. There's an offer you don't get very often from a speaker. Anyone got a question on anything? You can actually, I'll tell you what, you can even ask Anthony questions about cooking, because he's written some cookbooks too. And it sounds like you can ask Dennis questions about music as well. So
a little bit, yeah.
Some of them are even suitable for repeating on the air. I think Henry has a question there.
Yeah, go on, Henry.
Yes, thanks for the presentation, super, and the resources. massive amount of work. Very much appreciated. I was listening to you were talking about the DX the other evening, and there were a couple of stations who I couldn't hear the DX station. That's not unusual, but they were just putting on their call signs on a automatic loop, 2 or 3 of them, and that was all that there was, just running it and running it and running it for 10 minutes or so. I was just wondering when it would end. That's why I listened that long, and actually I ran out of patience after 10 minutes. So is that normal, or is that just the latest response to contesting, which also uses automatic things in between? You'll hear this gruff voice come across, and then an itty bitty little voice actually answers the CQ.
Yeah, it is popular to use recorded voice because it saves your voice during the time. If you are doing that, though, I would suggest you record it on the fly and change it once in a while during the contest, because believe it or not, your voice changes as the week goes on, or you might have a different operator. So I think it's a bad habit not to use the right voice, but a lot of people do that. As far as answering, sometimes when I'm trying to work a DXpedition with my puny 5 watts here, sometimes I may be calling for quite a while, whereas opposed to that person who has the kilowatt and the giant beams can come in and make only one call and get them. So sometimes some of us have to repeat it for a long time, but I don't, when I'm responding like that, I'm usually not using an automatic keyer, but sometimes I do if my voice is giving out. My wife likes it when I do that on field day, because she doesn't have to listen to me because we're usually in the same cabin or whatever. So she likes when I'm hitting a button to send my voice as opposed to hearing me scream my voice out. She also likes when I operate CW much better than when I operate phone. I always wear a headset, but when you're working phone, if you're calling, you're going to be shouting into the microphone. But if you have your voice recorded, it's a little easier, but it's not a substitution for, there's Dennis's voice keyer.
This is a voice keyer that I use with a couple of my Yaesu radios. So, and the idea is you nailed it. If you're trying to work a DX station and you're in the middle of a pileup, you're just going to be calling and calling and calling and calling, and your voice will give out. So you just don't even have to be doing contesting to have your voice give out trying to work DX. So
now, one of the tricks, if you're new at DXing, not only is the station working split, so when the station's working split, your goal, if you want to work them, is figure out who they're answering and where they're answering people. So if he says up 1 to 5, it could be anywhere in that 1 to 5. So what you want to do is quickly, when he stops calling CQ, you want to quickly listen and hear who's calling him back. And then when he answers a station, try and find them. And you want to answer either on that frequency or a little above or below that frequency and try and be the next person in line. So it's not just a matter of sitting there shouting, although that's the way some people do it. They plant themselves in one spot and just shout. It's sort of like a cat and mouse game where you're trying to find the other station and be in the right spot at the right time. And a good DX operator will move around so they're not always listening at the same spot. That keeps people moving and that keeps people spread out. The DX operator, his ideal thing is he doesn't care how many people are calling them, as long as they're calling on discrete frequencies that he can pick one out of the bunch. So it's a matter of standing out in the crowd, but you also want to figure out the right place to reply. And I have a presentation called Get in the Rhythm, Know the Rhyme, and Dance the Dance. And it talks just about that whole thing. It talks about the timing aspect. It's very important. I mean, on HF contacts, that's one of the most important things. One of the biggest differences between VHF, UHF is, especially in contesting or DX, is that whole idea of getting on the right time, the right place. So let me just show you that beginning of that slideshow real quick here.
Yeah, that is a real key. Timing is everything. Being in the right place at the right time is what it's all about.
Helps if I spell rhyme correctly. There we go. So it's called Get in the Rhyme, Get in the Rhythm, Know the Rhyme, and Dance the Dance. And the rhyme is the timing and frequency choice. I'm sorry, the rhythm is the timing and frequency choice. The rhyme is the contest or signal exchange report. And dance is learning how to listen and mimic successful stations. But basically, this is what happens. If you're trying to get into a polyp, it's a lot like trying to merge onto a motorway. You have to be going fast enough, but not too fast. You have to have the timing just right. And you have to have a spot to get into. And that's the same thing trying to get through a de-expedition or a contesting station that has a polyp going on. So tricks like that, knowing how to send your call, whether it's in phone. Oh, by the way, these are the phonetics you definitely want to avoid. These are not the suggested freak ones, especially things like R. Now, you think this is funny, but I listened to a station a couple months ago. He was trying to work an FY4 station down in French Guiana, South America. The station I was listening to was in California. He was really strong. It took him almost 2 minutes to complete a simple QSO of exchanging call signs and signal reports. The problem was he was using non-standard phonetics, and he was using one of the biggest bugaboos I think there is. He was using country names for his letters instead, and he kept using the word Spain for S. Well, of course, it's España with an E, and the station was a French-speaking station, so it even combined it with it. It took about 2 minutes. He finished up his call with my 5 watts. I was next. I used standard phonetics and completed it about 10 seconds. So this station could have easily used standard phonetics instead of the ones he was using and would have had much more success. So again, this is a slideshow that you're welcome to take a look at. It's called How to Make That QSO, Get in the Rhythm, Rhyme, and Dance the Dance.
Yeah, Anthony, something else that you can add to this is that the YLs out there have a big advantage over the rest of us in contesting and working the DX, because their voice stands out in a pileup and in a contest. And so they generally are at an advantage over the rest of us. And I've noticed that with my wife she's a little mic shy sometimes, but she'll get him to come back to her. The woman's voice on the air is distinctive and unique. So something to keep in mind.
Other questions?
Yeah, just before we throw some other questions, Al K8ZT, he's going to come and talk to the club in December. He wrote an article in QST recently about using FT8 Foxhound mode with de-expeditions, which I thought was quite a useful guide he was giving there, and giving some advice to people about exactly how they use Fox and Hound mode. So he's going to come and talk, and he's just got back himself from being on a de-expedition down to Lord Howe Island, VK9. So we're looking forward to Al's talk in December as well.
Excellent. Yeah,
and there's even techniques for FT8 and FT4. If anyone tells you that there's no technique involved, there's a lot of different little tricks and things of knowing how and when and where to call.
Foxhound is fantastic, though. What a great innovation is Foxhound mode. I love that. I love it.
Other questions?
Well,
comments?
any other questions for? Yeah, go on, Keith.
Yeah, I've got it's a couple of 3 comments basically. With FT8 with Fox and Hound, I managed to work into Botswana this afternoon by shifting my transmit frequency into a clear slot and locking it in, and I got him on the second call basically. So that works very well when you just see the massive pile up on his frequency.
Another trick you can do, Keith, to pick that frequency sometimes is see which station he just finished up with, and that's often an open frequency.
Yeah, I've tried that. The other thing that both Jim and I, G4JVA, and I noticed on the last RTTY contest is that there's I forget what the station was now, but they were sending continuous stream of RTTY call sign for, how long would you reckon it was, Jim? Must have been at least half an hour to an hour. I'm wondering whether that was because they're annoyed or whether or not they're trying to hold their slot. Just
I don't know. It wasn't a QTC in the WAE, was it? Those sometimes turn into a full 10-minute call.
WAE's this weekend, isn't it?
Yes.
This weekend coming. But no, it was a bit. You'd think, well, he's going to stop in a minute. Haven't worked him, and I think we both gave up. And my third observation is I'm just glad I'm retired, because the wealth of information you put out on these videos and the links, it takes all my day up to read it and listen to it. So thank you for that. I very much appreciate it.
I'm trying to figure out where Anthony gets the time to put all this stuff together. That and working as 239 countries or 231
I'm only
countries?
at 231 right now this year.
31.
I'm at 328 overall, though.
328 overall.
And then another thing I do too is I'll be starting tomorrow night. Actually, we run a holiday train on our scenic railway, and I'll be the North Pole conductor. So I'll be wearing my red uniform with the two deer antlers on the front of the hat, starting tomorrow night.
Yeah, I don't know where you find the time to do all this stuff.
Okay.
Other
Any
questions?
any other questions? Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Go on, Ken.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. It's not a question, as more it's a comment and an observation, not about your presentation, but about good work, good radio practice. Two things that bug me, and I am into DXing in a big way. Firstly, you've got stations that will work split, and I've heard one on 12-meter band. It's narrow enough as it is, but to give a split for 20 kcs is bloody beyond. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but it's bloody, because they're taking up a good portion of the 12-meter band, so the likes of me can't find a clear frequency. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, and I heard this morning, another one, a station, and I'm talking now a kilowatt station or more kilowatts, maybe one or two. Invariably, a lot of them are Italians, and they come on and they will say to a DX station, "Good morning, we worked yesterday, but I'm wanting to say hello to you again this morning." And I think, good God, what are we doing here? He spoke to him less than 24 hours ago. There are many stations calling this DX guy, yet this Italian wants to come in again. I'm saying Italian, it could be any nationality, but they seem to be the ones that contravene it a lot, and come in and want to say, "I worked you yesterday and the day before." But still they're taking time when other stations, little stations, can't get through. So it's a gripe against some radio procedures. Any comments, and I'll throw it open.
Yes, one of the things that I like that a lot of DX stations are doing now is they'll ask for ATNOs, all-time new ones, and what they're basically saying is, if you work this station, if you've worked this country before on any other band or any other mode, please stand by. We just want people who need this country for the very first time. So if you hear someone asking for ATNOs or all-time new ones, that's what they're referring to. They just want everyone else to stand by and give the people that haven't had a chance to work that country ever before. This whole idea of there's no reason to make that big of a split either. I mean, there's no way the station can cover it. It's not really efficient for anyone. On CW, 1 to 5 is plenty. 1 to 2 is actually more in line with most operations. On phone, 5 to 15 is stretching it. 5 to 10 is usually pretty good. So you really don't need that big of a gap, and all that means is the station can never work everyone that's there.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not practical for either end.
I definitely agree with that one. Yeah.
But yeah, if you hear someone asking for ATNOs, they're asking for all-time new ones, and that's what they mean by that.
Encountered that on Bouvet, that they were asking for just ATNOs.
I still haven't gotten Bouvet.
I heard one on 10 meters this morning, working split 10 kcs. I've no objection to any of that, but blooming heck, when you're talking about band as big as 10 meters, yet they're still working split on what was an exceptionally crowded 10 meters. And I thought it put me off. It actually put me off and made me move band. And I just think bad practice, you know. And what really bugs me is the fact that a lot of these stations that call in are well in excess of their power limitations.
Yeah.
Well, if you hear me, I'm always running 5
I mean, in
watts.
Spain,
One of the things, though, that we don't realize is some of the, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say one of the things that we don't realize is on.
you're limited to a.
Yeah, Ken, your audio is slightly breaking up, Ken.
Yeah.
I was just going to mention on 12 meters and 17 meters, especially, please be aware of how narrow the bands are when you're operating. Those bands are so much narrower than, for example, 10 meters or 80 meters. So we have a lot less space on those bands. One of the things that some of the stations that are newer to FT8 and FT4 that don't realize sometimes is they'll operate FT8 on a unique frequency, which is fine for a DX station to do. It's actually preferable. But what they'll do is they'll plop right down the middle of the FT4 band, which makes it very confusing and very messy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, generally they above or below, move above FT4 and a little bit higher. But at least one thing that 12, 17, 30 meters, at least they don't allow we don't do any contesting on those bands. That's one good thing. Stay away from those on contesting. So there's a little bit more when it's a contest weekend, you can usually find relief on 30, 12, or 17, at least here in the States. I don't know if that's the case worldwide, but at least here our contests stay off of those bands, which is a relief.
Also, if you're looking for,
I was just going to say to you guys in America that we sometimes think that all American stations are running large amounts of power and they've all got massive beams in their back gardens, and that's definitely not the case, is it? And you've got a very, very high proportion of radio amateurs using verticals or wire antennas in their gardens and 100 watts. We've got probably the majority of our radio amateurs on HF in this country using only 100 watts, most of them with vertical or wire antennas. And of course, I do feel, because, as someone who's operated with, that kind of power or lower over the years, trying to break through some of these great big pile-ups for the DX is very, very difficult. And, it does take an awful lot of patience and sometimes a lot of time just to find that unique moment when you can get that call in. Don't, those of you watching this talk tonight, don't be put off with that. If you go in and hear some DX, I mean, Anthony made the point, I was hoping to be able to get Bouvet, but I didn't get them. And that will apply to lots of us with DX. Just try, and if you don't get it, it's not the end of the world.
Right,
they're likely to come back at some other time, and you can make that QSO. But it is fantastic fun to make the contact and to get that DX contact in for sure.
So I do have something to show off now that my antenna's down. Fortunately, it was after this happened last year for the CQ Worldwide phone contest. I came in first in the world in the QRP category, and the trophy arrived last month, I should say. It arrived about a month after my antenna came down, so I didn't have to worry about competing this year because I had already got my trophy from last year. But one of the things, Nick, when you were talking about that, the reason why a lot of people think that all the stations in the US are running a kilowatt is because, of course, those are the stations you hear first. So even though there's tons of stations that aren't doing that, you're going to hear, there's some stations you're going to hear all the time. And that's another trick too. If you're interested in contesting, one of the things you want to do over time is learn who the frequent contesters are, especially in rare multiplier areas. So then when you hear them, you can jump on them really quick and get that multiplier before everyone else is, fixated on that particular multiplier or person.
Yeah,
Well, I guess
we've got some new members of the club. I know one of them, Ken Andy, is not here tonight because he's involved with his local football club, but over here. But you know, he's really, since he's got his license, really got absorbed and enjoys contesting. Not in a massively big way. I don't think he's going to be a few years, Anthony, before he can compete with first place in the contest on QRP. But you know, he's getting a great deal of pleasure out of working a few hundred stations on CQWW, and you know, an opportunity for him to get those new countries he didn't think he was going to be able to work and hasn't heard before, because they come up on the airing contests. And you know, there's a lot to be said for that, particularly for people interested in, you know, trying to make those contacts with you know, DX countries around the world.
Yes, and actually, I started out working contests, not the contest, but I was interested in increasing my QRP DX numbers, and eventually I got to the point where I wasn't making any new DX contacts. So then I figured I should start, you know, trying to be competitive in the contest. So it's been this is 40 years that I've been on HF, 42 years that I've been a ham. So it's, you know, it's taken a while. I'm at 117,000 Qs or so, all 5 watts.
That's amazing. I happen to be one of those guys. I will admit it. I'll fess up. I'll confess that runs legal limit with a couple of towers with big Yagis on them and lots of wire in the air. And I enjoy that. But I will tell you what, that I wasn't that way most of my time in ham radio. Usually I was on a small city lot, possibly with a vertical, usually not much more than that, and low power. So I spent my time doing that. But after I retired, I moved up here to the desert. We've got 5 acres, and the intent was to be able to put up what I've always wanted as a ham. 53 years that I've been in this, I've always wanted to have the big towers and the big antennas and all of that. And I'm living that dream now, which is wonderful. It really has changed things. So talking about you know,
This is the talk I gave at the Dayton Hamvention during the antenna forum. So if you're interested, this is one of my newer talks. It's the 10 worst antennas.
That's a great talk. I really enjoyed that.
And there's a recording of it on the Rat Pack site, so you can watch the 10 worst antennas. It's pre the tower coming down, so I now have added number 11, which is the tower coming down. There's number 11.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh, I hate seeing stuff like that.
Of course, it's only because the rest of us are jealous of you guys with towers and big Yagis in your back gardens. But
no, when it's on the ground.
we're going to be joining you in the UK, of course. Although I don't think in massive numbers, but Ofcom is consulting and considering changing our regulations to give the full license holders up to 1 kilowatt, the intermediate license holders up to 100 watts. And making some changes on the foundation license as well, all of which is great. But I suspect that the numbers of people shifting across to running linears and a kilowatt is going to be relatively small, as it is in the States as well.
Yeah.
Partly because these linears are extremely expensive, and partly as well because, you know, lots of people live in cities and busy towns, toe to toe with their neighbors, and the chances of causing, however careful you are with your antenna building and your radio building and your filtering, you know, once you're just a few yards away from your neighbors with all kinds of devices in their house, and you're sticking a kilowatt into an antenna, you're more than likely to break into them, aren't you?
What was the thing we came up with last night at the planning meeting? Worked all household appliances?
Yes. There's different categories you can work. There's multipliers for heating appliances, cooling appliances, washing appliances. So, you know, you could a dishwasher, and a clothes washer are the same multiplier. So you can't get 2 multipliers for those.
And you've got fridges.
Garage door openers. You know,
fridges on the internet as well now.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Yes.
Car alarms, burglar alarms. I used to when I was in the city. I'd get up real early in the morning, like 4 a.m. to get on 80 meters on CW, and I was running a kilowatt. and I would regularly set off my neighbor's burglar alarm, and it was a police response. So it's like I'd quickly turn everything off, shut off the lights, and go back to bed whenever that would happen, because it was just not good, not a good thing. But yeah, that's
the other. I think you've got it in the States as well. The other problem we got here is where you haven't got fiber broadband to your house for your internet connection. So you've got fiber to a box, and then it's coming on the twisted pair cable over on VDSL. Operating amateur radio, even on QRP, at 7 megahertz, can break into the broadband. So
right.
you know, and that's that. I mean, you know, they've got to do better with the filtering they make available in the sockets for people in the houses. But you know, it is a factor. And we've had people. I was talking to somebody the other day who told me he built himself a quarter wave stub to stop his 40-meter transmission getting into broadband. So of course, quarter wave stub means 10 meters of cable in his front room where his master socket came in, attached to the socket, which is some going, isn't it?
He should use something like RG174 and wind it up real tight into a little spool. That would work. But yeah, that's actually a great solution. That would work really well. Yeah, going to digital, the networking, digital streaming has done a lot to improve things with ham radio. You know, we used to have the worked all TV sets in your neighborhood. You know, that award for years from getting on 6 meters, you'd work every TV set within a mile. And thankfully that's no longer the case. But yeah, that's one thing, I knock on wood, I haven't had any problems with that getting into our phone system here, our networking system. So that's something good.
We covered this in the first 3, but I have a short presentation called Setting Up an HF Station. This is the link. I'll put it in the chat. This is a session I just did a couple of weeks ago for a group up in Ontario. Actually, I take that back. Ottawa. Canada. Oh, that's not the right link. Let me get that fixed before I post it. But that's just a short slideshow and just basically setting up your HF station. Most of the stuff was covered in our sessions 1 through 3, but just a little compacted one with focus on the setup actually.
Yeah, we had a very good talk from Rick Westerman, DJ Zero IP, who is American, was in the States, set up Spider Beam in the States, about the problem of how do we deal with common mode current on antennas, wire antennas, and he gave a fantastic 2 sets of presentations to us. One in very, very great detail about how to build the right balun in the right way to block common mode current. Otherwise, he said, what you'll get is your neighbors knocking on the door, and they're not knocking on the door to offer you a bottle of champagne. They want to complain about why none of their devices are working.
Yes. Oh, that's for sure. That is true. That's funny.
I think we've all been there. When you said about working on TVs, Dennis, I remember in the early 1960s when, of course, we had VHF TV, as you did as well, 405 lines in the UK, black and white TV. It was on pretty low frequencies. It was a kind of multiple of the 10-meter band, you know, a couple of spots up from 28 megs. I remember one Sunday morning, someone knocking on the door at my dad's house saying, "Found you at last. You're the ones wrecking my TV." And they'd spotted the big ground plane antenna on the top of the house with the radials coming down, and realized it was us that was doing it. That's so my dad then offered to said, "Look, I can fix it for you." He says, I'll build you a little device you can plug into your TV coax on the back of your TV that will block all my signals," which he did. The only problem was we lived in a very, very low signal TV area. The TV signals were very poor. And when you plug the filter in, of course, the signal then deteriorated because the filter was blocking out some of the signal strength coming in. So we weren't popular for a few years, but I think lots of people in the hobby have been there at some time.
Oh yeah, and also been the recipient of it too. As a kid, before I got into ham radio, it was my neighbor that got me interested in amateur radio. I was about 12 years old, and it was Bob W6QJU, and of course he was easy to spot because he had a 90-foot tower in his backyard with a bunch of big Yaggies up on top of it. But you could always tell when he was on the air. Our TV would get scrambled, and we didn't complain about it. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like the end of the world. And he enjoyed what he was doing, and he got me interested in amateur radio, and that got me interested in electronics and engineering. It built my career. So I cannot complain about any of that from my childhood. And it was, but I do remember those days of seeing the herringbone patterns on the TV set when Bob would be on the air. It's pretty much a fact of life in those days, and thankfully those days are behind us for the most part. So it's all good.
Well, Anthony, Dennis, I think we'll bring this to a halt now. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a very, very interesting talk again tonight from the two of you. And as ever, the real work is the work you've put into the commentary links on your slide. And yeah,
I'm pointing to him. He's the one that did a lot of the lion's share of the work.
Yeah, Anthony, you do a fantastic job with that.
Does a great job.
That they are very useful, and we'll make it available, obviously, and we'll put the links into your site where all those things can be downloaded. So thank you very much indeed. Been another really, really good talk. Really enjoyed it. So thank you guys.
It's been
you're very welcome. It was our pleasure.
Pleasure to be
Thank
here.
you.
It's been a lot of fun. And I hope we get an opportunity to do more of this in the future. This has been great. And I enjoyed meeting everyone here and meeting with the club, and what can I say? It's just been a great experience.